The first one is if you can identify the days that you would be available for an Excellence in Education Foundation dinner with either M&A Technologies, they're the folks that bought it, M&A Technologies, Purdue, Brandon, Fielder, and Mott, and then Pogue, Pogue and Associates. So, but this is the first one, and Jean, if you'll pull out your phone, some of these are Sundays, and I forgot to mark this as a Sunday night. I know it's not optimum for a lot of people. So if you would just mark the days that you will be available, and we're going to do this for one dinner. And then the second opportunity, this is the GT Gifted and Talented Investigations at Junior High that we received the update about. And what this is that you would have an opportunity to go to a gifted and talented class at one of our junior highs and present a problem that faces the Board of Trustees. Their work this year is based on explorations and investigations. So I'm working with Shannon O'Brien and Tabitha to come up with the right question. And so what you would do is you would go in and you'll have talking points, everything you need. It'll be a brief overview of a trustee and how we use information to make decisions. You'll pose the problem for them, and then they'll go back. This is the week of November 2nd. They'll go back and work on this project the entire month of November, and then one school will be selected to come and make a presentation to us. So we have listed here all of the schools and a person, and then it's the week of November 2nd. So there's not, if there is a day that week that is particularly good for you, if you would make a note, that would be fantastic. And also, just make a note too, if you've got multiple schools that you're interested or that might work with your timing, that way it gives Catherine and I flexibility to figure out where to plug folks in. And if you need to go, if we need somebody to go to two of them, like I could go to two if I had to. I would prefer to share the love, but let us know if you could do two of them. Okay? So, Dr. Kewen, do you have a question?
Well, just a clarification, because Jean and I had already responded to Tabitha to say that we would participate.
Yes, and she does that.
Is that different than what you're sending around?
It's the same, but there were some other folks that didn't perhaps respond like y'all did. So this is an opportunity to provide everyone the opportunity to respond.
See how softly she is?
And go ahead and write, go ahead and write their names.
Yeah, but I'll let you guys, yes, Kristen, you'll be in charge of, it falls under the vice president role. So yes, please,
Got it. Thank
now
you
you
for
can
the
be more than.
clarification, Madam President.
Thank you, I live to serve.
Can I write
Dr.
down
Kewen.
this?
Yes, yes.
November 2nd.
Thank you, Mrs. Bona. So I'm going to grab something to eat, and then we will go into closed session here in just a moment. Thank you. Did I do that right?
Great.
Okay. Great idea. Oh, I'm on the sandwich tray. Yes, she's on her way. She just texted me and let me know she's having traffic. Oh, go for it.
Everyone gets something.
I don't have one. Thank you.
There are a lot of
At this time, we are going to enter into a closed meeting under Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.072, consultation with attorney at 071, excuse me. 071, consultation with attorney at 6:08. Thank you. And to have a 2016 bond claim discussion, Dr. Wagner.
Okay, let me just kind of lay out what we're going to do for this afternoon. You've got 3 documents. One is this document right here. It is still in draft form and will be in draft form probably up until we call the election. But we've got updated figures and it results from a lot of conversation from the questions we had at the last meeting and also feedback from the bond subcommittee. And then you have another document which traces the scope of major work by campus, and Mr. Falkenhayn will go over this. And then the third thing this afternoon is just to walk you through the PowerPoint that we plan to use at the thank you listening tour, and just touch on highlights of what we plan to include in those presentations. And then we have a video that we will share with you which reflects our thank you for the bond 2011. So does that work with everyone? Okay. But this time I will ask Mr. Falkenhayn to take you through this document. And what we thought we would do is share as much information as you guys need so that if you have questions about some of the line items that you'll be able to answer those. So at this time I'll turn it over to Mr. Falkenhayn.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wagner. What we've done is we've incorporated some of the items that came out of the discussion at the last board meeting along with items that were discussed at the last board bond committee meeting. The format is going to be, the first page is going to be somewhat similar. The dollar amount has dropped fairly significantly. You'll notice that, by the way. The format as far as the supporting pages behind that, what we've done based on the suggestions from the board budget bond committee is to collapse some of those. It was a little too much information, so we've rolled some of those up. We've included some of the curricular areas on the same page instead of having whole pages just for them, since they're fairly light as far as items that would qualify for a bond. A number of categories, the dollar amounts have changed. The most significant changes have to do with instructional technology and with the construction number. What we did on the instructional technology piece was eliminated the dollars associated with moving to a 1:1 ratio based on feedback from the board at the last board meeting. And then we also took what your suggestion was to come back with a reduced scope item for the non-traditional high school and eliminate the early college high as a standalone facility in that cost estimate. So we've done both of those things. And as Dr. Wagner mentioned, this is draft. It will stay draft for quite some time as we get additional input and as we continue to refine and go through the individual requests, look for coordination, look for duplications. We think we've eliminated those at this point. Technology will continue to be a big question. There were items and still are a few items of technology that are embedded in individual categories. We tried to eliminate those from the curricular areas and pull that all under that instructional technology umbrella. But those are the biggest changes. One thing I did want to point out is if you were to put the front page, it is off by $1 due to rounding errors because some of the requests are actually to the penny. So what we will do is we'll correct that on
That's
the
just
request.
unacceptable, Tony. I don't know.
We'll fix it for the next time, but what we'll do is we'll eliminate the requests that are down to the penny and round those to the nearest dollar, and so the rounding issue will go away. But if someone were to sit and put this, you'll notice that it is off by $1 because of the rounding error. Questions on the front page before we move into the video? And yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, we were talking about, you said the number came down from the early college high school.
Right.
Where, I mean, be missing that on that line item?
It's on the very last line on the front page on construction.
On construction,
On the
okay.
far right-hand side under equipment. That figure was, well, at one point it was as high as 35 million.
Yeah,
And then it was reduced in scope to 21.8.
okay.
Is what you saw at the last board meeting. And then it's down to $8 million.
Gotcha, thank you.
And there are actually two pieces that are in that total. One is construction of a standalone facility for a non-traditional high, and the other is the renovation work at the annex. So about 700,000 of that is renovation work at the annex. The balance is the standalone facility for a non-traditional high.
Thank you.
In service of those programs, renovation at the annex, am I understanding you?
Pardon me, I'm sorry?
So the renovation at the annex would be necessary to serve those two programs?
No, it's necessary because of the departments that are moving out from the operations center and the other departments that are moving in as a result of selling Security Row. And then there would be a tie-in. What we were proposing is it would attach to the annex and come off of the annex. And so it would, we'd reface the front of the annex and have it be a consistent look and flow.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay? Questions about that over the overview page? Then let's just go right into the detail, if that's okay. First page is athletics. Instead of listing every single sport for uniforms, we rolled some of those things up. There was some, there's a lot of duplicated information there. The dollars didn't really change. If you look at the cycles piece or the maintenance piece on athletics, the largest portion of that has to do with the replacing the turf at the 4 stadiums. It is beyond the end of its useful life, and we've been kind of nursing that along. And so that would be a year 1 type of a project, but that's $2.2 million of that $8 million worth of maintenance. And then other items are improvements to the baseball and softball fields are a large ticket item as well, and then uniforms and aggregate. And then you have the next largest piece is going to be junior high track resurfacing. It's $900,000. So all of those cycles, things that reach end of useful life or at or beyond end of useful life are $8.6 million, a little over $8.6 million. If you go down to the enrichments piece, multi-purpose practice facilities, 4 of them, $81.5 million. One of the things that we did at the request of the board bond committee was to add a category about campuses affected, so you had a sense of that. One of the things I've also done is just giving you a draft page of, we used this in the last couple of bonds, we just call it a little dot chart, and it just gives you a very quick reference about, you know, what types of things would occur with this proposal at each campus. Quick reference, 1 pager, so you're not having to flip through 40 pages of things. So if you're out at Bowie Elementary School, you can very quickly tell them that, you know, the items that are there would include some C&I items, technology, security systems, etc. So we've added that field onto the spreadsheet. What we eliminated was we had a draw schedule in there which showed 5 years, and that's very, we're way too early to be able to make that determination. It wasn't helpful for you at all, so we pulled that piece out. And then we also added operational impact where we know that at this point. So you'll see those categories added. So multi-purpose practice facilities, all 4 high schools. We've indicated that campuses affected would be all campuses because the indications are that groups from all the way down through elementary would be able to use the facility. What is included in that number is the site itself would be an 80-yard field with an end zone on either end. That field length was driven really more by marching band requirements for practicing than it was for football, soccer, or any other sport. So that gives them almost a full field to be able to practice on. It has a height that would be sufficient at the middle of the facility to be able to accommodate kicking practice and for both soccer and for football. It includes offices, new weight rooms, would be part of that, as well as on storage for fine arts. What it does not include, locker area. We would continue to use the locker areas that are at the high schools already. That's what's included. And also in that number is, since that would include new weight room facilities, it would include, this figure includes renovation to the existing weight rooms. And I think in every instance, the request is to turn that into provide a larger room for wrestling, and then to renovate the existing wrestling rooms to provide a secondary training facility. So all of that renovation cost is included in that multi-purpose facility figure. So it's not just that, you know, if you do divide that by 4, it's not $20 million just for the facility itself. It includes those other pieces.
Tony, we have identified potential located sites on each one of the 4 campuses, or is that something we're still working on?
We have a potential site at all 4 campuses. The most problematic site is Richardson High. That is the tightest space for land of the 4.
Right.
The proposed site there would be the practice field that's on Mimosa, would be the site there.
The one directly behind the stadium on
The
the east
one
side?
directly to the east of the stadium,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So would that just, I know there's a lot of details to work out, would that just mean that West would need to have access to the facility to, because doesn't West use the B field at RHS now, or?
They do, so there'd have to be some coordination.
Yeah.
And there's already coordination as far as use
Right.
of that field between the varsity, junior varsity, and junior high.
Yeah, but that's
Teams.
workable based on your,
Right. Questions about that piece? Yes, ma'am.
I know you've given this to us before, but could you just real briefly tell us where the other 3 would be located?
Certainly. And again, preliminary,
Yes.
but the preliminary sites would be at Pierce High School. It would be on the south east corner where we have an open area. It would actually not affect the B field at Pierce. We have the luxury of having a little more land, so it would basically be at the corner of Mimosa and Melrose, I believe. At Bertner, it would be on the B field that's on the south side of the campus. And at Lake Highlands, it would be on the B field area that would be on the northeast side of the property.
Thank you.
Does that help everybody picture that in your mind?
Between the school and the baseball field?
Between the school and the utility easement that's, I believe. is
Right next to the freshman center?
Yeah. Other questions on that piece? The other item under enrichments for athletics is $560,000. They're requesting 4 additional activity buses that would be used for all campuses. We currently have 3 per high school, and they're just requesting a 4th per high school. Yes, sir?
Just 2 follow-up questions, I'm sorry, I was eating my cookie.
That's fine.
So are we gonna have, and you might have said this and I missed it, so I apologize if you did say it. Are there gonna be like classrooms for for athletics? Their own purpose-built classrooms?
In the indoor
Yeah,
practice facility?
yeah.
No. What they've included at this point, based on conversations with Bob Doobie, Jeff Bradford, and Michael Longnecker, would be some office space for staff in there, and then the weight room area and storage area, but no dedicated classrooms in addition to the space. So certainly that's something that could be considered, but that is not included in this number.
And my second question was about the weight room. We're gonna have a brand new weight room?
Yes.
Okay.
With new equipment, we're not porting the old equipment into the new space, right?
No, we're not.
Okay. Just checking.
I mean, as much as I probably would like to, because I mean, a 45-pound plate still weighs 45 pounds. It's just all beat up. So, but to resurface those and replate them is you combine, you set for less money than you can replate them. So yes, it would be all new. It would be all new equipment.
Okay.
Other questions on that page?
Bigger space, I mean, what?
Larger weight room.
Yeah.
Larger space, more equipment, state-of-the-art equipment. All of that would be included.
I do have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would all the dressing rooms in all 4 high schools be the same size then? Or is that?
No, they're not. The weight rooms in all 4 high schools are not exactly the same size. They would all 4 be larger than what they are, but they're not, you'd really be hard pressed to find almost any space in all 4 of our high schools that's exactly the same size, just because of the difference in when they were built. But they would all be bigger.
Thank you.
The next page on career technology education, under the cycles piece, the other piece that we like in the format is trying to put a little bit of a descriptor up underneath the heading for it. Some of them are very straightforward and don't really require a lot of additional description. I think athletics, everyone knows what that means, but as you get down into some of these, some of the terms are, are a little vague for folks that are additional information there. We will continue to refine that language as we go through. So the cycles piece would be the capital equipment refresh for the existing programs at all of the high schools for any of those items that have reached the end of their useful life. $7 million. The enrichment piece is to expand the offerings for the, I've been saying it's 4 focus areas, but I think it's really 5, isn't it, Sandra?
Yeah, I'm calling them.
So it's really, is it 4?
The 4 priority clusters.
The 4 priority clusters, making sure that we are addressing those at all 4 high schools is included in the enrichment, and some expansions there. So you'll see the information for health sciences, for example, and the campuses affected in this number, when we say, is it 5?
Yeah, because there's one that's on the priority, the culinary's on there, that's on the
So
priority.
culinary, it's 5, the 4 priority areas plus culinary. So under the campuses affected, where you see Pierce and Berkner only under health sciences space expansion, it's not that we're ignoring Richardson High and Lake Highlands High. The numbers for Richardson High and Lake Highlands High are incorporated in the construction numbers that we've included to deal with the projected enrollment growth for those campuses. So what we probably ought to do, just so we don't alarm people, is we'll put a footnote on those and then just say the other 2 to be addressed in construction. Is that all right with you all?
Yes.
So what we have is under health sciences space expansion, you've got the renovation work for Pierce and Berkner. We've identified existing space within those buildings that we can use for this and convert to for this and give them meaningful space for the program. And then it's the equipment for all 4 high schools, but it's only the construction for 2. And then the same is true for business, finance, marketing, facilities upgrades. It's only those 2 schools because the others that was included in the construction figure for their expansion. Training space for teaching internships, that's actually all high schools. And then the STEM upgrades, again, it's the renovation work at Berkner and Pierce and the equipment for all 4. The education and training expansion, $100,000 Pierce High School, and then the hospitality culinary arts would be Pierce and Berkner High Schools for renovation and equipment.
Sorry, so, Tony, can you clarify that training spaces for the teaching, internship, and education and training expansion? I'm not sure I'm following the difference between those 2 things.
Well, it's fortunate that Ms. Hayes is here to be able to speak to all things CTE. So, Sandra, do you want to answer that,
Certainly,
or?
I'll give the staff.
Okay.
The training spaces for teaching internships, that is renovating existing classrooms at those 4 high schools with the equipment necessary to mirror what our elementary classrooms have. So that it's a secondary classroom as part of the teaching, and then a model elementary classroom
It's
as
like a
well.
lab.
Yeah, like a lab.
Almost, okay.
Mhm. And then at Pierce, we need to, the classroom area has a little side area that needs to have some renovation done to it, and that's why it's separated out as education and training space.
Wait, say that one more time?
So Pierce has an extra room attached to theirs that needs some additional renovations in order for it to work, where the others, so we separated that out.
So really, they're the same
Yeah.
program.
Mhm.
We could combine those two numbers just to make it a little easier.
The only distinction is that the $100,000 item is not one of the labs.
Correct.
It's just, but it is space associated with the
It is.
education.
It's upstairs at Pierce, and it has like a little mechanical room, and it has an empty room, and then a lab and a classroom, and so.
So we'll combine those two lines.
Okay, and then under STEM, can you tell me a little bit about the upgrades that you're proposing?
In the $2.1 million, Sandra, do you want to, I can answer that, or you can?
Are we talking about upgrading our labs, science labs, so that we can offer dual credit? What are we talking about here?
That is some of the detail I have on
Fume hoods.
No,
No fume hoods?
we like the cameras.
Somebody said a few hoods.
Fume.
Few hoods.
Get into your rafting.
that. Well, it's different, it's a little different at each school. So at Bertner, for example, it includes a variety of things. I mean, I'm looking for the biggest ticket part of it.
These are CTE classrooms, not science classrooms.
Right.
So when we say STEM, they're CTE engineering specific, like the automation, manufacturing lab at the freshman center, the STEM robotics labs at Bergner, the lab at Pierce where we do the AutoCAD and training areas.
Perfect, thank you, that gets me there.
So, let me just clarify, so you said what's listed here when you list the 2 schools is for construction, correct? Like on that STEM line, Pierce and Bertner is listed, you said that was
It's
listed for
construction for
construction.
the two, but
then
it's
equipment for all.
for all 4.
So I think that's really important that we make that distinction, that we put Pierce and Bertner schools construction, like semicolon equipment all, or something, so that we really can make sure that anybody looking at this has that full scope of what that work looks like.
Okay.
Because I'm wondering the same thing about business, finance, and marketing. Like, that, I'm assuming that's primarily equipment.
Well, it's mirroring the workplace and those, taking those sterile computer labs and mirroring the, what we consider a more current workspace environment,
Okay.
along with the equipment that goes inside, which probably will not look the same as it does now.
Anything else on that page? You go to the next page, fine arts. Again, the same type of approach we took with athletics, crushed some of those things down. Didn't necessarily list the concert uniforms, marching uniforms, each, and in each discipline. We didn't list choir separately and orchestra and band with it. So you've got, under their cycles, the 2 largest pieces have to do with the uniform refresh, and then the instrument, equipment, and stage curtain refresh is $3.45 million, and the uniforms is $2.45. Room furnishings, all campuses, $807,000. Marching towers and pads, those are just end-of-life items, and marching equipment is end-of-life items there. Under the enrichments, we have some expansions. Total is $317,000 at secondary campuses, and that includes the choir room expansion at Westwood, the orchestra room expansion at Richardson High, choir room expansion at Lake Highlands High, and Lake Highlands Junior High auditorium work. Then elementary furniture are going to be things like winger cabinets, stands, chairs, that type of thing is $86,000. Questions? Yes, ma'am?
When you say expansions, where are those, I know each one would be individually, but just kind of give me a feel for expansion into, where are they going into, where are they taking over?
Like, for example, Westwood, there is a room just adjacent to the choir room that we would be expanding into. And then Mr. Gray has identified other space where it's not a regular classroom, it's adjacent to it, so that those support staff and those functions will be able to locate elsewhere in the building. We would take that extra real estate and expand the choir room there. The Richardson High orchestra room expansion, it's what it really involves is taking in a large practice room that has an adjoining wall that faces the hallway, taking that room in and then pushing some of their winger storage cabinets into that room and freeing up more space in their performance area for students, is what that is. Takes the storage out of the performance area, pushes it into a separate room, is what it would be here. Lake Highlands High School has a little more flexibility as far as choir room expansion there. We would either be able to look at expanding into adjoining space or addressing it as part of the expansion when we add on to the school to accommodate the enrollment growth. So we have a few more options at Lake Highlands High School. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Uniform refresh, marching uniforms, what else?
Their concert attire, they have tuxedos and black dresses that the students wear for concert attire. Those will be
Band and choir.
Band and choir and orchestra, all three on those. And then for band, it will be marching uniforms as well. So we have, I believe it's at least a 10-year useful life on those, and we're on a rotation with them. And they just clean and cycle them, and they're designed where they can be sized, within a reasonable range, if you
Yeah,
have
I remember.
Yeah. Within a
Yeah, I'm pretty
reasonable
sure
range.
the
It's not a
tux-
perfect fit, I mean,
Yeah.
very
I'm pretty sure
few-
the tux my son wore was bought in the Eisenhower administration.
Yeah, they definitely are, reaching.
We don't go any below junior, or high school, on the, we don't go to junior high.
No, and they have,
They have to provide, like, usually they'll have, like,
Well,
the same thing they wear. but we don't
at
provide.
junior highs, they have, they would have, they don't go to the same degree. They would have a black dress pants, and then dress for the girls. But they don't have marching band at junior high, so they're not having to use that anymore.
Thank you.
So Tony, at one point in time, we had talked about drill team. Did that get included in the uniform number?
That is,
Different page, different line?
let's see, that includes, guard uniforms, drum major uniforms, marching band uniforms, those are what are included in this.
Okay. So no drill team. And then the other thing that I thought we had talked about at one point in time was smaller instruments. So under fine arts, do we get any deeper into the kind of instruments that we're able to provide to students? Do you remember, am I making that up? Do y'all remember that conversation? Okay.
Well, they're on the cycle, and so what we try to do is we've been trying to expand the number of instruments based on the enrollment for the programs.
So I know that we do a good job of providing like the bigger stuff, like the tubas and all the percussion equipment, but I thought we had talked about even potentially providing smaller woodwind instruments or even violins to orchestra students.
Well, we do, and they can
Okay, so
rent those.
that's
And
what's
so
getting
there's
expanded?
there is a complement of instruments that's available at every high school, junior high, and elementary school.
And that's what you're saying is getting
So
expanded?
they're refreshing those, is what they're doing. And so we've been using other dollars to slowly expand that over the years, especially as our demographics have changed, because you've got a higher, low socioeconomic number than you may have had 20 years ago, and so you're seeing more and more kids in that lower socioeconomic bracket that are participating, so we don't want to preclude any student from being able to participate. So they've been expanding over the years the number of instruments that are available.
Okay. And then within the fine arts number again, does that include stuff for theater and theater arts?
It includes for, in their capital outlay piece, they've got, under their equipment and stage curtain refresh, they include theater lights, sound, pieces are included in that.
Thank you.
So the uniforms that would be considered kind of official school uniforms that we don't provide today are, we don't provide drill team, we don't provide cheer.
But the one major drill team uniform was always provided when my kids were in the drill team, the one skirt and hat and the, you know, every drill team had.
We don't have a closet.
Well, and let me look at that piece, because it could be, you know, they're on a rotation, and the life is beyond 5 years, so it could be that piece was covered in the 2011 bond. So I'll clarify that and what happens with those other
I
groups.
think we provide one standard, the regular marching uniform, but all the other things we had to buy.
I'll get that clarification
Okay.
for you, and let you know what other groups we cover that for, and when was the last time we did that.
The expansions, Tony, I know we talked about this at the last bond committee meeting, that it seems like we either need the room or we don't. If we do need the room, it seems like it ought to fall under kind of capacity construction, if you will. So why is that an enrichment item?
Well, it could really go, it can go wherever you want it to go. You know, there are,
I can
we're
only vouch
making do
for
with
the-
that now. I mean, at Westwood, it makes it very difficult, especially for
really
the
hard.
sponsor
Yeah.
group. But we just felt like it was different than the construction for enrollment growth at Lake Highlands High and Richardson High. But we can fragment it however you all would like.
Well, I can only speak to how crowded the Westwood choir room is, which is not, he can't even really do instruction in there, because he's so close to the kids, because they just surround him. But I don't know, that's just anecdotal, I don't know what the situation is at orchestra or the Lake Highlands choir, but it just seems like we just need to make a call if that's something we need to do or not. And
Well,
it just
I think
seems kind
for
of
the
weird for
others-
it to be an enrichment, so.
I think for the others, it is something they would prefer to have, but it's not, it is not a requirement.
Yeah.
It's a little tight, right now, but, you know, that's why we put it in enrichment.
Okay.
Ms. Lake has anything
I don't know, I haven't seen the Westwood, but I know that they've grown in there.
I mean, Joel's got people not sitting on risers, they're in chairs, and they go beyond him, which ideally,
It'd be in front of it.
they'd be in front of him and he'd have a good 10 to 15 feet back, so I can hear him.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, if you go in there when his largest is in there, I just don't know how he does it.
Of those items, Westwood would be, I would think would be one that really is problematic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't have any problem with moving the Westwood choir expansion into the construction category.
Chris, can I ask you a question? What do you see the difference being? I mean, because it's gonna all be voted on together, is it in how we present it and the listening tour and all that is gonna be more
Yeah.
important as to where it sits?
I think so, because to me, if you're talking about, we've got to increase capacity to fit the kids in there, well, that's like, okay, well, we got to do that. And enrichment, well, then let's argue, let's discuss whether or not that's the best use of dollars or not. But, so that to me is kind of the importance of the distinction, is that, to me, if we're talking about renovating to have enough space for kids, that's not enrichment, that's like a basic thing that we can do. So, that's my point.
Right, we've gotten several questions, when people look at the documents or look at the information that we have, that asking about where is the input for dealing with the growth in space and capacity, because we haven't labeled as that, and I think it's gonna be important, again, as a distinction, that those are essential elements for the district to function versus whether it's enrichment, and we may need to be more diligent about marking those specific things, that those are capacity issues that we have to deal with for growth. Just from even from a listing standpoint, so that people can find it in an easy way.
And then, the thing about choir is that you never want the space to discourage kids, because it's, of all the fine arts programs, it's the one that anybody can do. You don't have to buy an instrument or, it's anybody can do it. So that's to me is one of the advantages.
I'm pretty toned out.
Especially if you heard Dr. Hewitt sing. Yeah. Choir for you.
In theory, anybody can do it.
Choir for you.
And we can follow up and possibly move all in there. I know that we've had questions about growth in Lake Collins, and that might be a good representative way to show we're addressing capacity issues.
I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge number. It just seems to beg more questions than it answers. So if you guys would look into that, see if it makes sense to just include that under the capacity.
I think the Westwood, yes, and the others, no. I think it would really still be more.
Those are more true enrichments, whereas Westwood is,
Well, if you would move all those trophies out of there, come on.
that's true.
You gotta get more room.
We need a trophy annex.
Okay, other questions on that page?
It'll be portable.
If you go to the next page, library media, what we did was we had two different lines in the draft that you saw before that we had innovative instruction space, and we had library media. And we had a very large piece in library media and a smaller piece in innovative instruction space. Those two really overlapped, and we still have two lines on the front page that one is innovative instruction and the other is library media, innovative instruction, and then we still have one called library media. We'll make that line go away, that library media, and just combine those two completely. We pulled the renovations to the libraries that would be part of that innovative instruction space and put them in this category, along with that ancillary, the other innovative instruction space that we identify in each of the campuses. So a little change there, and we'll make one more change on the next draft. What this includes is on the cycles piece, $2 million for library books and resources. And then most of it is under enrichment, $32.1 million for enrichment. That's broken down by elementary, junior high, and high school. And that would involve really just almost a complete renovation of the library space.
So the cycles piece is not shown on this one, just so you know.
On the
On mine,
for the
anyway.
$2 million on
It's
this.
just a different page, it's back on page 9.
Ah.
I think that's what you just said you were gonna make that, right?
Yeah, we're gonna.
Oh,
we're
you're
gonna
going to. I
collapse
thought you
those.
said you
Yeah,
had.
we're
Okay,
gonna
sorry.
collapse those two,
Gotcha.
so you'll have the cycles, that library cycles will be on this page.
Gotcha. Okay.
Along with the enrichment, so that going forward, you'll see those two in one line. So the enrichment piece would be those schools, and what we've done is we've included kind of a standard complement at an elementary school as far as what that would look like, and what we would include there. The an elementary campus, it's going to include teaming tables, chairs, storage units, section of idea paint, some enhanced technology, including projector. This is one of the categories where we still have some of the instructional technology figures included in this line item instead of pulled and put into the instructional technology piece, and we can certainly revise it going forward. This is what's included in the number right now. And then additional devices, space upgrades, including finishes, which would be carpet, paint, lighting, some electrical upgrades to accommodate that. You'd also be looking at the renovation to the circulation desk and just the flow in the library overall. And so then so one space, more of a collaborative space within the library to allow for that at the elementary school. At the junior high, same types of things, except there would be 2 of those kinds of spaces identified within the building. One would be the library and one would be a secondary space. And then also including a cafe type of an option there, similar to probably a little more robust than what they have at West. Right now they operate something along that line, so it would be expanding that and making it available at all the junior highs. And then you would also start doing some of the more electronic types of devices, a kiosk for checkout instead of just having to go to the desk, and then more electronic references for students as far as card catalog and things like that. But the same type of complement of furnishings there and additional technology. And at the high schools, the thought was you'd use the library as one of those innovative instructional spaces, and then there would be up to 2 additional spaces somewhere within the buildings. That'll vary by campus. A more expanded cafe at the libraries, and then some soft furniture to create something that would be, almost like a Starbucks. You have couches and different things for different types of collaborative instruction to go on, or for kids to be able to work together a little more easily. You have zones within the library for them to be able to do that instead of just one open space. But that's what's included in that figure. Questions on that piece? Okay.
My only observation about this at this point is this, just that it's still in need of some branding help. I mean, it's like, well, I mean, I get what's said up here, but I think about, the example I always think about is like, for the high schools who have reimagined their locker spaces, calling it Locker 2.0 or something like that. It's like we need something that helps people understand what it is we're talking about. We're really talking about, it's like, when I was a kid, libraries were really kind of the hub of there was, because we were so dependent on books and encyclopedias and things like that. And what we're really talking about doing is kind of making libraries relevant. And kind of reasserting it as the center or the place where kids can go and do that, but more of a focus on teamwork and collaboration, those kinds of things. I just think, I don't know, Kara, it's really vague, non-specific, but it just seems like we just haven't quite nailed that in terms of something that you can say that people are like, oh, yeah, I get that. That makes sense. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, it feels like I kind of know what you mean when I read this about, atypical space layouts and all that kind of thing, but it's just not as compelling as I think it should be.
Yeah, I think it's hard because I think even though libraries have morphed into something new and different, we still call them libraries in the textual sense of that.
Right.
So some people would be really disturbed, I think, to think that we were totally not having libraries anymore. So if you rename them, maybe, but the concept of library/media center or material centers, or it's, some people will be upset that they're not named that, and other people won't understand what they are called if we name them something new. I'm not sure how you.
Maybe you use the words you just used, up there, saying something about making libraries more relevant.
We can include some of those descriptors that Tony, where
actually captures it. Why does that not capture it?
I mean, I think something like that that tells people it's still a library, but it's like
Yeah.
the next iteration of it.
Yeah.
Right? Sure.
A lot more technology and access in there. You have things like device bars and the flip nest tables. All of those would be part of it. You'd have new workroom. You would have the junior high's online catalog stations, cafe tea tables, digital book kiosks. At the high schools, it would include all of those same things, plus converting the second offices into media production areas and adding glassed-in collaborative rooms within the library. So if you've got a group of kids that are working on a team project, they could go in and use that separated room within the library as a way to do that.
Yeah.
And give them some privacy. So those are the kinds of things that we do. So we can work on how we message that out and make that clear about what that really means. It's not
Right.
just the same, it's not your dad's library anymore.
And I think that's really significant because this isn't the library that we would go into where you walk in and you go, shh, shh. This is
Right.
about interactive, innovative, learning, thought leadership that we're gonna really challenge our kids with. So this is one of the show places of our campuses.
Right.
And as you said, it's going to be an instructional learning hub, not just for our students, but for our teachers, for our communities, that use our schools. So it's a real exciting opportunity for us.
It's the largest classroom in the building.
There you go.
And we're creating facilities that support your instructional vision as well, right? I mean, that's what this is about. We're pushing for the different type of.
Right.
So I think the more energy we create with it, this is really an exciting, innovative move on our part, very forward-looking, forward-thinking. So I just feel lots of energy and enthusiasm for this.
Yeah, so I think it merits the time to think about how we package that and get people to understand what we're talking about.
Is this one of the pieces that in our video we're showing what it could look like? Is that?
We do have a module that describes that. It's a visual picture of our current state and what might be possible with further improvement.
Because you're right, Chris is right, if you're just looking at this and that language on that one page, it's difficult to visualize and think about what that's really mean. So we thought with the presentation, there's several areas, the indoor practice facilities, CTE, the innovative learning space, technology, I think, is another one. And is there another one beyond that, Kara, or is that good? Well, that's it. So each of those areas are a little tougher to wrap your mind around if you're just looking at the single page. So we'll come in and supplement that with the information in the PowerPoint. Health services is relatively straightforward. As you move into some of the curricular areas, it's not that we value them any less, it's just that they have fewer, they're not as capital intensive. And so you just have fewer items that qualify for bonds. So, within this, we have cycles for the medical equipment that would be reach into useful life. And then we've also got some manuals and training manuals that would be part of that under the cycles. And then on the enrichment side, it would be to change how the automatic defibrillators are accessed. Right now they're in offices, and to put them out in an area in the hallway where they could still be accessible but somewhat secure, so people don't mess with them, but a little easier to get to. Questions on that piece? On instructional technology, this is the item where we moved away from the one-to-one. This includes under the refresh piece. You've got devices, peripherals, software, audiovisual, and then project program management, which, that's similar to the overall project program management. There are staff that Sandra have that are dedicated to bond projects, and in those instances, we are able to cover their salaries out of bond. And so, you know, even though they have an annual salary, we would pay that portion down annually. So again, matching the life of the expenditure with the life of the debt. And I know you have questions about what that might look like on the refresh side. So on the maintenance side, everything that's in that category represent items that are going to be at or even beyond their end of their useful life. But that total does not include every item that will be at end of useful life, if that makes sense. What we're having to do here and under facilities is we are stretching the useful life for a number of assets. We did that in the 2011 bond, and that's what's included in the refresh portion of the proposed 2016 bond for those two areas. And we'll get to the facilities piece a little bit later on. They look a little different, the approach is a little different, but the bottom line concept is the same, in that you're going beyond. If you have a device that has a 5-year useful life, we may not get to every one of those devices by the time it reaches that 5-year period. We may have to stretch that into, you know, an additional year or whatever period of time. So you move towards the end of that cycle, you really move into more of a break-fix type of mode. You reserve some funds to be able to replace those items that fail. And then on the enrichment piece,
Tony, before we talk about the enrichments.
Sure.
So how much more would it cost to fully fund refresh?
well, you'd really be looking at that, correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, but you'd really be looking at the number similar to what you had in your earlier draft that would be closer to $50+ million. Is that correct?
And this is still very much in draft, and we still have some work to do on this side.
And that 50, I think the number was $54 million previously. That basically takes every device that we track and would replace them within the 5-year period. And so that includes donated items that, you know, were enrichment when they were donated. And I know that, Chris, you've been a real stickler for, you know, wanting to make sure that we're not asking people to give us things that would be part of our standard complement. So it's been enrichment that then folds into that number, which is problematic if it does. We really need to pull that off. Otherwise, then you create, people would buy it once, and then we would buy it for forever. And so it creates some disparities in campuses if we do that. If it's an enrichment, it needs to stay in enrichment, and they would have to continue to fund it. But you'd be looking at more of the $50 million range.
The only comment I would make about this section is, we have a really, in our instructional technology or in our CTE maybe platform, but somewhere we have a really rich statement about how we use technology to aid in instruction, aid in support instruction. I would like to see the description go in here that talks about, this is technical, and I know we're being careful, but you know, we have a really thoughtful way about how we talk about how we use our technology in associated with our instruction, and I think it would be important to make sure we give that statement.
I think we can look at it in two facets. One, the instructional delivery, and then number two, the student engagement piece,
Yeah.
all in technology integration.
And you've done a nice job of setting that in our mission statements and things. I'd like to see it included here.
So the enrichment piece, got that, we'll work on that language on that. So the enrichment piece is to, you know, if you've got new implementations for devices and peripherals, that could be handled a variety of ways. That could be taking everything to cycle. That could be sticking with a prolonged cycle for some devices and increasing the number of devices. It would just depend on what the needs were and how you want to approach it. But that's what would be included in that $21 million, or $20.9 million worth of enrichments.
And just to clarify, that's the hybrid approach that you described to us at our last meeting. right? Like different devices for different needs, for different
Different
subjects.
grade levels, different curriculum areas.
Okay. Thank you.
We're
So-
going back and analyzing like classroom complements and those kinds of things.
Got it, thanks.
So assuming we don't just put that all to refresh, the other 20 million, but actually add new devices with it. I mean, Sandra, can you, I know it's hard for us to look at two lines and get a picture of, how that's closing the gap in our schools, but, that, where does that, if the extra 20 million is all going to filling the gap, so to speak, how much of the gap does it fill versus how much more would you need to,
On the devices?
Yeah.
The gaps for devices.
and peripherals for that matter?
So, additional devices will be mobile devices, is what we look at. We're looking at mobility and different types of devices, again, depending on the instruction and where they're placed, but across the district and all the schools. I mean, you have to fill in some gap across the board. The number of devices. Is that what you're asking? I'm not sure I'm following.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess
I'm not sure.
maybe the better question is where were we before we cut the number down?
We're at 80 something.
So 54 used to be 80. And so that was, I guess maybe a better question is, if I'm a high school teacher and I need a class set of Chromebooks for something, does this extra 20 million or somewhere between some portion of that kind of get me to that point to where I'm not waiting on that, and I have access to them when I need them, or are we still?
We are still working the massage of these numbers
Okay.
to try to come up with exactly
So
what
we
that
are-
would be.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Dr. Wagner about this earlier today, and I'm not trying to squash any discussion, but just, I think the message that I tried to convey to her, and then I guess I'd like to convey to this larger group, is that we just want to make sure that we are, as it relates to instructional technology, that we are, that it's led by, well, first of all, that we take a realistic view to the refresh of the existing equipment we have out there, but secondly, that we also are led by our instructional expectations and goals in terms of the level of investment we think we need to make in technology, as opposed to trying to hit a number. And recognizing the realities of the fact that we've got, limited bond capacity, we've got bond ratings that we have to worry about, fully acknowledging and stipulating all that, but still feel like we have been, there are aspects of technology investment that we've been, as a district, kind of kicking down the can for a long time. And so we just don't have this opportunity very often to really take a hard look at that and decide what we need to do. And so just feel like the will of the board is really that the recommendation that we get from the staff is one that will enable them to meet their instructional goals, right? And not one that helps us to meet our financial goals. So, and also recognizing that, with the constraints of what we have to deal with from a financial perspective, that if we can't get all the way there with this bond election, we have other mechanisms at our disposal, whether that's fund balance or capital projects or wherever that might be. But one of the things we talked about is, in particular, and I know Kim, who visits more campuses than anybody, I know this is a kind of a big deal to you.
I don't know, Jean's giving her a run for her money. Like,
Yeah, Jean is out there. But, you don't have to go to many campuses to get into a classroom that's suboptimal from a technology perspective, whether it's a projector on a card or, cables being where they shouldn't be, or, you know, power cords being where they shouldn't be. So we also want to be, a lot of the emphasis when we talk about these things is on devices, and everybody kind of thinks in terms of Chromebooks and iPads, but we can't lose sight of the maybe less scintillating aspects of just, you know, good projectors that are that work and are, you know, just do a good job of displaying and are easy to use by the teacher. So just wanting to make sure that we have some minimal level of what's acceptable in our classrooms that's available to our teachers, and make sure that all of our classrooms meet that standard, right? So that's a lot of stuff, and it undoubtedly will end up being a big number, but I think we would like to see what that number is and then figure out how we can address that. And to your point, Justin, you know, we need more than just a couple of lines, right? We need some meat in terms of what this is going to enable us to do. But really, at the end of the day, more than anything, we just need Dr. Wagner and Dr. Stone to stand up and say, this is what I need. This is what I need to do, you know, to meet our instructional expectations. This is what we need. So, anyway, sorry.
No, I think that's well said. I mean, I guess that was my question. Is like we know we have challenges. We know we have some shortcomings. You know, $54 million. But which of those does that close? I guess was my ultimate question.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like we're still, you know, working through that, trying to figure out where the right balance is.
Yeah.
We are, and this is, you know, the server is still very much in draft form, and we're going to try to continually make sure that we're capturing the minimal expense in the classrooms as well as refreshing the art. So this number will go up. I mean, probably not to the original number, but it will go up.
Yeah. Well, wherever the number needs to be, right? And then that's not to say we're just automatically going to sign off on it, but we just think we as a board want to know what you guys think it's going to take. And then let's work together to see if we can figure out a way to make it happen. And I just think there's aspects of technology that we have been just kind of living on borrowed time, and it's time for a true up. So I think this might be the time.
It is. You know, we've got 9 days before we present to the bond committee. And so we need to have a pretty good idea of what we're wanting them to give us feedback on.
Right.
In less than 9 days. So, good luck. Let me know. I mean, I'm just, you know, we just need to decide. I mean, where we are, we kind of have run, you know, the range on this. We have an an $83 million figure earlier, and you know, I think that created some concern. And I know we're saying money. We need to look at what we need, or what we want to make available. But I think at the end of the day, the money does matter. And so we're going to have a real constraint on the number of short-lived assets that we can accommodate in a sustainable manner.
Right.
And it won't be so much in this bond, but whatever step we take in this bond will put us on the path for the 2021 bond, and that's probably as much of a concern for me as the things that even though I'm looking, so. That's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just, you know, it's really just, would you rather have a technology or an instructional issue or a financial issue? And it's, you know, I mean, because if we manage the financial issue, we've not managed the technology issue. Because it's kind of like the balloon, right? You squeeze down the refresh to get more money over the enrichment, but now you're not refreshing what you need to be refreshing.
But
so it's like,
as long as you can sustain it, because
right.
if you put yourself in a position where in 5 years you can't buy all this stuff again, then you really haven't accomplished very much.
Right.
We have kicked the issue down. We kicked the can down the road in just a different way, but then you're going to hit a wall in 5 or 6 or 7 years on sustainability.
Right.
So I think we've gotta be cognizant of that, and we need to try to find a balance. And certainly we can look at other resources. The concern I have about those things, the resources that you mentioned, those are one-time sources of funds, and technology is not a one-time expenditure. So we buy it once with, if we were to wipe out the permanent school fund, if we were to use the permanent school fund, it's gone. And then in 5 years, you don't have another permanent school fund bucket. It's just gone, but then you're gonna have to replace those devices. So, I think we're just gonna be aware. The capital projects budget, we have obligated that for the next 2 years. We've already spent it for the next 2 years. So all those things just need to kind of come into play, and we're just gonna have to pick our words.
So to Chris's point, the 25 million that came out of this from the last number, did that come out of cycles or out of enrichment?
Well, it came out of, what we did was we reduced the enrichment piece that would have allowed for one-to-one, and then we took a portion that was in cycles before and we pushed it out
You
to
said that.
enrichment.
Okay.
So what we did is we moved back to a similar approach that we had in place for 2011. That's what we did. 2016 cycles reflects the same approach as 2011 cycles did.
So what I'm hearing, and this is where we started down this path last year, is that we started with the premise of what do we want, what is best for kids? What is good for kids? And there are a lot of different things that impact this at the end of the day as we make our decision, but our decision is only as good as the inputs and the information we have. So I think it's critical, and what I'm hearing the board say is that we want to understand what are the instructional deliverables that we want, both from an optimum teaching environment in the classroom, because we've said there's 4 really areas that technology impacts. The libraries, these new learning centers, our classrooms, and then there's a device piece. So in the classroom, what is the learning environment in the classroom that for the teachers that will help them best instruct our students? What does that look like? What is our minimum standard for that? Regardless of the price, we need to understand what that is, the minimum standard, the optimum standard for optimal learning experience. And then the second part is from the device standpoint, is understanding by grade level and by subject area. You don't have to give us the detail on grade level and subject area, but each grade level and subject area is going to have different needs. What do we need from a device standpoint? We know it's not one-to-one, but what do we need from a device standpoint to help our students be similarly successful? So that's the information we need, and then from there we can start to make decisions about, what we can include in this bond, what are other avenues we can do, but that's the starting point. And I think that's what we're looking for.
And I guess I would just ask too, you guys did bring us a budget that reflected one-to-one. Is that what you guys think we need to be offering our students in our district? I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions about that. If you guys feel like that is where we need to go, right? So I guess understanding that continuum, and then.
I think the earlier number was and I'm not trying to speak for anybody, so y'all just chime in if you want. I think that was our attempt to address what we thought the board wanted to see in the bond package. It's not that we are saying we have to go to one-to-one. We thought that that's the direction that you wanted to go.
You thought we wanted to go to one-to-one.
Yes.
Got it. So we're dancing here.
So did I misspeak? Anybody can chime in.
I don't think we've had that conversation yet.
Right.
That's the perspective, and I think if we're trying to read the tea leaves that each of us are holding, it's not serving us well. So what we've got to do is we've got to come back and say, this is the information we need to make a good decision.
Yeah, because we've been kind of waiting for the dust to settle on a lot of these numbers, and a lot of them are still red and will remain red. And so I think we're just having this conversation now to say that, you know, I mean, the point I was making at the board meeting about one-to-one was, I mean, literally the question I asked was, why are we doing that? I mean, why are we doing, why one-to-one? Because are we saying that that's the instructional model we want to go to or not? And what I'm trying to say, kind of the same thing, but in a different way tonight, is that what I think we really want is for the staff to tell us, what is it that you,
What's the optimal
right,
delivery
what is it that you need?
mechanism that you guys would
deliver.
propose for?
I'll give you a couple of pieces
Right.
just for historical purposes. If you remember, we did a technology audit several years ago. And based on the model that we follow for our computer vendors for a 5-year piece for break fix, we really can't manage a true one-to-one where we give the same device to every student for 24/7. That's what a true one-to-one, when you read about those. Every student gets a device at the beginning of the year and they keep it 24/7, and they either keep it through the summer, turn it back in. We can't sustain that model because we don't have the support mechanisms in place. We have the infrastructure, but we don't have the support model. And so we said that all the way through. So I think part of what gets us in trouble is we reference one-to-one in different types of contextual use.
Yep.
There are one-to-one models where students have a device at the school to use when they need it that doesn't go home with them. It's not necessarily on a cart, and it could be just in the classroom, depending on the model that you want to follow. There are multitudes of blended models that you can do. So we hear from all of our teachers, and the Technology Advisory Committee over the past several years, all of our teachers and administrators say to us, we have not had enough devices in the kids' hands that work on a daily basis. We hear that. That is what our data says. And so that's what we tried to do, is build in here what capacity we could handle and what numbers we could sustain following our model.
But not with the 24/7
But not with the
one-to-one.
24/7, right.
And there's no research that shows that
That's a
you
better
know,
model.
and really, from our teachers, from our educators across the district, really, there's no outcry for that in terms of enhancing our instructional expectations. So that's why we moved away from that. And I think everyone feels better about that decision from the instructional side.
Yep.
So, yes,
And this, what we have in front of us is the moving away from that?
yes.
Okay, but it still incorporates the hybrid model that puts more devices out there for teachers and students to use?
The two numbers combined would, yes.
Okay.
But what we gotta go back and do is address the classroom.
Yeah, but we pay for that by reducing our refresh funds, basically.
So we're
Because the
still in
refresh number went
the
down by about
devices
the
that
same.
work is what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, so that means that
You keep the
laptops.
same refresh cycle that you have right now.
Right.
And then you can do a blend of, what that would allow Sandra and her team to do is a combination of increase the ratio and/or enhance the refreshment cycle.
Right,
It wouldn't be an all or none.
right.
So you could do a blend of the two. So it would allow her a larger bucket of money. So if this computer fails, and, you know, if 100 of these fail, she would have the funds to be able to come in and address that more readily, instead of having to be, you know, very judicious about where it goes. Well, I mean, she always should be judicious about it, but instead of having to be restricted on where it could go,
Right.
she'd be able to do that. So it would, I think that the hybrid of that is probably the best answer.
Yeah.
It's not to go in and say, I'm just gonna replace every device in 5 years, period, and move that $54 million up to cycles. I think you do more of the refresh with a piece of that, and then expand the ratio with the rest. So we just need to let you know what that looks like, and determine if that number gets us where we really feel like we need to be.
I think that's what we want.
That's what I'm hearing you all say.
And we need to relook at our numbers really for what our classroom environments need to look like.
And just to clarify, because I think what I just heard the two of you guys say is, to Mr. Bono's question earlier, this proposal that you brought us here gets us 100% of the way to delivery of instruction the way you guys would want to do it optimally.
I wouldn't
No.
necessarily go that far.
Necessarily go that
Too far.
We need to
Too
give,
far.
we
Too
need
far.
to give Sandra, we need to give
I'm on the
Sandra a little
continuum, I
opportunity.
went too far.
A
Okay.
little opportunity to revise the number. So
Okay.
the
I got
number
it.
that's in there right now would allow us some discretion, but it doesn't necessarily address what we've heard you say about what is the standard that we expect, and then what do we want to offer. So we need to give,
Somewhere
hopefully,
between 54 and 80
yes.
is where we're gonna like, yeah,
Yep.
got it.
Yes.
Squeezing it down, closer.
Thank you.
Okay,
But
so I think we
one
have our.
thing about that though, that I do want to just, and I'll pass it over the bow in this, is that, I leaned over to Sandra a second ago and I said, do you feel like we've heard enough from our teachers to be able to come and answer, Chris, your question about what, you said to come back and tell us what we need, and I would want to come back and say what the teachers say
Right.
they need.
Absolutely.
So, and she said very passionately with the nod of her head, yes, we have. So what, in the stage that we'll be going back to that, is looking back at what the teachers said they needed to take us out of the stage of being suboptimal
Right.
in terms of technology. And that's what we'll be bringing back. So I felt good about that answer that you
We've been
gave.
very purposeful on our technology advisory committee, as many of you know, on who we put on that committee, what we asked them, what research we've done, what devices, what environment, learning environment, we've had CNI on it. So we've been very diligent in making sure the stakeholders whose opinion matters and these type of things, that it's not just me picking a device because it looks pretty.
Yeah.
That-
I'll see what our goal is, because we were board meeting Monday night, is to bring something back Monday night prior to going to the DRT first.
Oh, good. That's good. And
That
I,
was your weekend? I'll
Yeah.
check on that.
Well, I know we're
And
trying
it's
to put a
still
bow on
draft.
this when we
It's
move
still-
on, but one thing that we all need to bear in mind, it's difficult to project out costs 6 years away. It's extremely difficult for Sandra to be able to project out costs when you don't even know what the devices are gonna look like. When, right now, we don't know what they're gonna look like in 5 years, so she's having to try to anticipate, what's likely to occur. So it's creating buckets of funds that we can then deploy, using whatever the current technology is,
Yeah.
and make sure that we're achieving what I'm hearing you all say about that standard for classrooms, that standard for teachers and students, and meeting expectations. So,
yeah.
all right, we'll work on that piece. Can we move to?
Yeah, can I just tie that final piece on the bow, maybe put a little, some of that curly bow on it,
Curly
if I don't
bow.
like that. I just wanted to say, to the extent that we caused thrashing about on this, I apologize for that. I don't think that was our intention. I think, I can recall us having some discussions about one-to-one last year with some of our planning sessions, so sorry if we sent mixed messages, but I hope you guys kind of know where we're coming from now.
I think we have a clear
Okay.
understanding. The next page is Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. This is under the cycle piece. This would include refresh for equipment that would be at Berkner High School already. And then it would be, the enrichments would be expanding the program to the other 3 high schools, along with providing a training facility that would be like an obstacle course that all programs would be able to use as part of the enrichment.
Is that the Greenville Avenue proposal?
That is, we don't necessarily have a site designated specifically for that, but it would be, that's the cost for the obstacle course itself. If we were to put it down on Greenville, the cost is gonna go up, because we would have to do a screening wall and some other things for that are gonna probably be more expensive than the obstacle course itself. We may have to look at putting that at a campus and using some existing green space. The one that makes the most sense to me would be Berkner, just because it's your flagship program and, it's already there. And it's a pretty good location, there's a lot of space there, so it makes some sense. So we haven't landed on exactly where that would be, other than that we want to provide that obstacle course as part of their training. And is it something they're required to do, or just encouraged?
They're encouraged to do. It's a ropes course in terms of physical endurance and the training. That's what it's a ropes course.
And Sandra, can you remind me how many students we serve at Berkner on the
105 this semester. It goes up to 150, we've had up to 150.
And why do we think that we want to put it at the other 4 high schools? 3 high schools, sorry, I can count.
That's been something that really has been board feedback. It really has been a wonderful program at Burton. It's needs for a lot of kids that don't necessarily fit into other niches or they're not in the band or they may not be in athletics, but it really emphasizes character and leadership and, I mean, it really is.
We've got a fair number
really
of
is a
kids that
strong
don't get to do the military straight out of high
program.
school.
We do.
Lots of parent requests over the years from the other high schools.
That was my next question. I was
It's
trying to get to
also
the demand part of the
Yes.
equation.
Lots of
We
parent
feel like we
requests.
could still have all 3 of those programs done. Okay.
I mean, it's also a pathway program because there's such good scholarships and such good continuation of that effort to moving kids through the pathway.
And it could be staggered. I mean, that's a possibility. It wouldn't be that you had to bring all the other 3 high schools on simultaneously. If, if Lake Collins High School has the greatest demand for that, and you could make Lake Collins the next one, and then Richardson the next one, and here's
Actually,
the
it would
last
have to
one.
be staggered because we rely on the military, for those of you that weren't around, we did the Burton one. We rely on the military for instructors. They only have X number of instructors available. So and these units start as NDCC units, National Defense Cadet Corps units.
The ropes course is definitely not something that could be incorporated into the multi-purpose facilities.
No.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's like
I don't know anything about them,
it's like
so.
a buried in the ground, kinds of stuff. It's not portable
is it?
kinds of things, right?
It's like a ropes course.
Okay.
They prefer to have a wall to go under
Right.
and
Yeah.
tires to crawl under.
It's
and-
everything except the tower. And
Gotcha.
so, it's, if you saw where we went a year and a half ago for leadership training, it would be some of those elements would be part of that.
Yeah.
Is this the ropes course just at Burton, or is that gonna be at all 4 high schools?
Well, we would envision it being a one location that all 4 high schools could use.
Okay, and that would be at Burton?
Well, that was just a thought. That's
That's
just a
okay.
suggestion. I mean, we haven't landed on location yet.
Okay.
I think the biggest challenge that we've had over the years is that the Department of Defense is very specific about their requirements for the program in terms of facilities, in terms of space.
Right.
And we started at Bergner when we did the expansion to bring the 9th graders up, and we had the room. We haven't had it at the other 3 high schools, but every high school principal has expressed a need for this program. And until now, we just haven't had the ability to do it, so I think this will be really well embraced.
The next page is that, we already really kind of talked about that the library needed to fold into that other library line, it says cycles for books. Go to the next page. We collapsed some of the curricular areas together, and so you're gonna see language arts, languages other than English, mathematics, and it just continues on to the next page with physical education, science, social studies, and visual arts. So we're looking at, for cycles, you're really looking at books and some of the, there's a little bit for like language arts, you've got some interactive pens and translators and a few pieces of equipment, but it's mainly books there. For the enrichment, it's the iStation and reading intervention programs that would be part of that. The languages other than English, the cycles, it would just be supplemental resources for them. Those are not consumable items, they're items that have more than your useful life. Big chunk there is the languages other than English lab upgrades and everything that would be involved with that. Those are, those are the language labs where, they have, they're not currently internet compatible, I don't believe, and so it's upgrading the lab itself, and then you have to do some abatement in there.
Turn the labs digital.
Right.
They're working off analog system.
There you go. Mathematics, it's calculators, math manipulatives, books there, and then you go into PE, it's fitness equipment, gym upgrades are part of that, whether it be basketball goals or any other items that have a more than 1 year useful life. some gym storage facility renovations at some of our elementary schools is included here. We have some spaces that we don't consider to be inappropriate, they're not as accessible, so if you renovate, making some renovations there to give them more meaningful storage space. Under science, big chunks here. Under cycles, it's just the science equipment, microscopes, all those kinds of things, and books. Also some work on the Environmental Service Center pond, and then some of the safety and chemistry equipment refresh. Under the enrichment piece for science, the biggest piece is laboratory remodels. This would be, I believe, 7 labs at junior high campuses that would be included in this figure. Renovating those to where they could provide multi-discipline approach. So instead of having just a chem lab, you would have a lab that could handle physics, biology, and chemistry at those campuses.
Would that include what's needed for dual credit courses?
That is junior high. So
Junior high
dual
is where
credit
we're
would
doing
be
the
high
lab
school.
remodels? Sorry, trying to keep up here. Okay.
Social studies, just materials there, reference materials, instructional materials. Moving into visual arts, you've got cycles. This would be kilns and vents and art equipment and furniture. And under enrichment, there is a room at Lake Highlands, that an art room at Lake Highlands and an art room at Berkner that both are, we would like to do some renovations to improve their circumstances. And there are a couple typos I'm noticing on those. We'll fix those, so don't worry about that.
Quick,
And then continue on with that. Go ahead with your
I have one
question.
quick question. How much spillover, that may not be the right word, that we get between devices that could be used as calculators and real calculators? I mean, at some point, do we end up with devices that can function as calculators and we don't have, to have calculators? I mean, I'm sure there are some sets, but is that something we looked at to see?
Yes, we have looked at it.
Okay.
I think there's some issues on testing that where it allows you to be able to use a certain calculator, but not necessarily a computer.
Not anymore, tablets, they just released that, that's a new piece.
Yes.
iPads can be used for calculators, but some of the calculator pieces that they need are not available necessarily on an iPad. Some of the advanced courses that they're looking for, right?
One quick question on language arts. Meetings are running together here, so sorry to remember all this terminology, but iStation, was that the program we just had in our
Yeah.
DIP that we were rolling out to?
In the board update last week, I wrote up a kind of a big paragraph about that, but that was where we were assessing our kids' reading levels K-8. And then there was an instructional component that once the teacher's aware, it assigns them to, and they work through a curriculum where they are tested and then they can progress and teachers can see where they are at the beginning of the year. Well, actually, they can see where they are on a monthly basis, progressing through reading levels. So that's what iStation is.
Okay. So I guess my question is, this is sitting here under enrichment. Is this additional, is this adds to that program, or is that, well, extends that program? Okay. So we already have the program. This is an extension to it. So it's appropriate under enrichment here. That's the question.
We think so.
Okay.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
Just real quick, on your gym upgrades, and I'm just using Yale because I've seen it, lately, I mean, it's a pretty sad state for a gym. I mean, in terms of updates, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean, new floors, new tile, the walls, et cetera, paint? I mean, what does upgrades mean exactly?
That means, let's see.
Tetherball, I like tetherball to come in. I love
What
the
is
game.
Well, now, Yale is a little different circumstance
Well,
because we're
okay.
going to renovate,
Sure.
Yale. And so they will be looking at some of those common spaces and then flooring and all those kinds of things. So so it could be that it gets addressed there. That's not the scope of what's included in this figure. This is gonna be,
Okay, so take Yale, put that on put that to the
yeah,
side.
kind of put it in its own little category. You know, what you're looking at here would include backboards, basketball rims, wall mats, locker room mirrors, sand bells, weight equipment, mini trampolines, exercise equipment,
Okay.
sound system upgrades, that kind of stuff.
So nothing like it's all equipment, essentially.
equipment.
I
All
mean,
equipment.
yeah, okay. Okay. So nothing to brighten it, brighten them up or.
Well, that would be like paint and things like
Yeah, yeah.
that would be under paint cycles. We've got a bucket over in the facility piece, so if you've got where you do paint refresh, flooring refresh.
Okay.
Now Yale is gonna be kind of different animals because they're scheduled for renovation.
Sure, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Special education. Go to that page, under cycles, we're looking at evaluation instruments, assistive technology equipment, communication devices for developmental program classrooms. The biggest chunk is under enrichments, and this would include special education, specialized curriculum and intervention programs, a little over $500,000, developmental program curriculum and equipment, and then preschool programs for children with disabilities, outdoor living areas at elementary schools, $275,000.
So Tony, the investment that we need to comply with the new state law for the cameras, is that something that we will do prior to this and it will come out of bond, or will some of that come and be associated as we move through that process?
That would be on an as requested basis, and we would have to make other provision for that.
Okay, so
It's difficult to include that in the bond because we don't know how many of those
Okay.
will actually.
And
That makes
I know
sense
there's
to
a
put
con-
cameras in every.
No,
Well,
no.
and I know there's a time period associated with the compliance, so that was just curious about
Right.
how that falls in that structure.
So we would have to make other provision for that
Okay.
with other funds or anything. Next page. This is just cycles for manuals and equipment that they use. Student performance evaluation. These are just cycles for the big Lexmark printers and scanners for all campuses. Page after that, enterprise technology. This is, we talked about the devices and the peripherals. This is really the infrastructure to be able to support that. Plus, it is the big chunk here has to do with information systems refresh. And, we called that business information or business system refresh before, but it's really much broader than that. This is, you're talking about our registration system for students. You're talking about our timekeeping system, our HR system for substitutes. It's our business module as well, but it's a much broader category than just the business piece of that. That makes up but all those systems will be at the end of their useful life, and in several cases will no longer be supported going into this next bond cycle. So we will be forced to make a change. Like on the business operating side, I think that we will have to make that change by 2018. And so, this is something that we're not necessarily thrilled about having to do that, but it's just been, it's part of what goes on.
But
It's like
it is a huge,
conversion to
Yeah.
throw people away.
huge cost, but I mean, it's the cost of being able to operate efficiently and effectively, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The refresh network, what is that specific?
That is the layer 3 and layer 2 switches and routers that will be end of life, that need to be upgraded to match the capacities that we need on our campuses.
Okay.
And APs, they've already changed the APs, going to a different channel system. So we're going to have to upgrade some of the APs that are out there.
Okay.
Access points that are in the classrooms.
Better gloves.
That right there, that white hot hug.
This guy
Those
here.
things change. The roadmap for technology devices is 18 months. So the fact that we have these kind of devices that we're able to manage past 5 years is outstanding.
Remarkable.
Thank you. It's remarkable.
Stupendous, even.
Extraordinary.
Construction,
Real quick.
page.
Tony, sorry.
But he's had all the words he could think.
Sorry. increasing broadband spectrum. Is that part of this and the need to increase the spectrum?
I think.
And that's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, I think what she was asking, what I hear from people all the time is they need more bandwidth. They
Right.
need to be able to stream videos in a more timely fashion.
Right.
And so that has two pieces to it. That's really about the age of the device they're using and the capacity it can handle, the age of the equipment that it's running through, and then the amount of our pipe, how big our pipe is to run through. We cannot bond the capacity of the pipe. That is a subscription, that's a yearly operating expense that we have to do. And we have tripled our bandwidth over the past 3 years, and we will probably add to it again this year with streaming video being the majority of the use.
Thank you.
And yet Alex still gets kicked off Netflix at school. I just can't understand.
Netflix is closed. No Netflix.
Can you talk a little bit about these last two enrichment items? It's on page 15.
The document management archiving system, that is basically a dedicated server for archive management.
Will that
Isn't that
help
what it
us
is?
with public information requests?
It would.
Okay.
But isn't it also, we have so many projects and not only things that students are creating, but teachers are creating that need to have a place to live?
No,
Is that-
this is
that's not-
strictly for the business side of the house, for
Okay.
our management of our documents as a business that we have to maintain.
Okay.
And we, right now, we archive them with paper and send them in boxes.
And then the last item, that digital
Yes.
streaming video and digital signage solution, that is hardware and software, 5 monitors per campus, to expand that function.
Something like that at West? Big video monitors at West, or?
Yeah.
Remember we started the digital
Yeah.
signage where we put TVs at the front of the classroom, front of the schools, and when you walk in, a lot of
Yeah.
those are, expand that. Principals have asked for more of those around their building to share their announcements, to share information for people that are entering the building, and we need a software solution to run that. We use it for emergencies.
Thank you, one question, sorry. Backing up to the information system refresh, so, sorry, I missed it. So that is like both software refresh, to the network is those things, but the information system refresh is both software,
All software.
so no hardware.
The hardware comes in the network refresh.
Okay, so that's for the hardware.
And the PD software mentioned here, like you guys had talked about the fact that there was some software that the campuses were investing in to help your campus improvement plans roll up. That is not this.
That's not that.
That is not included in here, whatever that software is.
Correct.
Okay, so this PD software is then.
That's a district-wide piece of software that's used for all of our entries for our professional development. When you take a course, if you register in it, you get your credit through it, keeps transcripts for teachers. We currently use a system called ERO, and we need to replace that. It is an antiquated piece of software.
Got it.
Can we get a break, just a, I'm sure you've got it in your fancy little 100-tab spreadsheet there, but that breakout of the 18 mil and the 22 mil, just in some big categories of what software pieces these are, how much of the 18 is hardware versus yellow for like pods, et cetera.
The,
Just in big chunks is okay. You know,
I don't have the, well, I don't have the breakdown on that 18.5 with this. The 22 is, don't have dollars associated with each one of these, but this is Kronos, the badge system, the subsystem, Remedy, which is our inventory tracking system, our electronic data interchange, OEBS, which is our business HR suite, single sign-on capability within the network, online registration for students are all included in this.
So we're gonna go back to online registration for students?
We're gonna try again.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Keep
keep that thought. Remember all the conversions.
People love focus. I get parents love focus so far, so. It's feeding their addictions.
We'll just, take
Okay.
a break after this. I was just looking at where we are, and I think we're close to being finished, so if we can finish this, we'll take a break after.
Construction. This is, we've got two categories here. We have the part, that we're not considering enrichment. This falls into that construction category, and those are the three remaining schools built in the '70s, Aiken, Prestonwood, and Yale. And this is relocating renovating the office areas in all three schools, relocating the administrative suite at Aiken and Prestonwood to allow them to secure the building, and then addressing common area surfaces in the building, hallways, walls, floor, ceilings. It's also eliminating the pods configuration in those buildings and giving teachers dedicated space that has a little more privacy at each of those. It also includes the renovation or expansion at Lake Highlands High School and Richardson High to address projected enrollment growth at those two buildings. Richardson High would be first. They hit their capacity figure earlier than Lake Highlands does. Lake Highlands would be second. It's adding 21 rooms, 21 classrooms at Richardson High and 24 at Lake Highlands High. Those are under the construction. The enrichment category, the biggest change here, as we talked about earlier, is we've pulled down the scope for that, what was non-traditional early college high. It's now just non-traditional high school. $7.3 million. That would be 22,000 square feet of space that would be attached to the annex. Questions about that? Would accommodate approximately 500 students. We would envision that being addressed through three different schedules. You'd have an AM schedule, an afternoon schedule, and an evening schedule to try to accommodate students, and it would give us at least 4 separate classrooms within the space, plus collaborative space, and like a lecture area with a dining area that could also double as collaborative space, a small administrative suite, restrooms, all would be incorporated into that.
Tony, would you talk a little bit about just one of the options that we discussed in terms of capital projects?
One item we did discuss is based on this dollar amount is pulling this out of the bond if you so chose, and fund this out of capital projects.
And would you just do the pros and cons of why we would or wouldn't do that?
Well, the reason that you would do it is just to reduce your burden, the impact on the total bond dollar amount, which would reduce the impact on the debt service or the debt tax rate. That would be the reason to do it. The reason, there's really not within the 2-year period, we feel like we would be able to fulfill the cost of the operations center that we're already committed to, plus this cost for a non-traditional high school within the 2-year period.
Would it be available quickly if we went that route as opposed to being dependent on a bond?
Yes, it would. Now this is the item that, if you're wanting to implement this for August of 2017, this would be the one that you'd have to make a decision on the construction management risk no later than December. And we would prefer that we make that decision. That is the drop dead date. We've crushed that down. We've said October, and then what we've done is we've collapsed that schedule for getting a building permit. And so that assumes that everything just works perfectly, no snags, no delays. There's very little room for error on that date. So we would prefer, if that's something that you want to move forward with, that we make that, we'd love to have a 30-day jump on that, and not wait till the very last second. Because it's so close that if you were to come to us and say, well, we don't want to make it on December the 7th, we'd like to make it on December the 14th, we won't be able to deliver that facility by August 2017. That's how close. 1 week will push us. 1 day. I mean, you know, it's that close. We mean it. That's the.
Well, one thing we need to do too, since this would just be an add-on to the annex and not standalone, we probably need to drop the high school and just call it an academy. It wouldn't be a standalone, it would just be a non-traditional academy or program.
It would have its own CDC?
What now?
Would it have its own campus ID?
No.
No, okay, got it. So those kids would all, their accountability would also
Yeah,
go to
that's
their own
right.
schools. Got it, okay. So, I heard Lynette ask for pros and cons, and I heard pros, but I didn't hear any cons. Is there a con?
Administratively, I would just say in terms of flexibility for us to be able to be nimble and move forward and open that up, it would be nice to, if we can cover that now with the cost, with a reduced scope, have capital projects that will get a recommendation if you're looking for one, but I would.
And we have enough parking to accommodate?
We do, part of that cost would be to take the fueling area right behind the administration building and turn that into additional parking. So we feel like with the parking we have plus the spaces here, you know, now that does involve eliminating the stadium still next door. Because just for staging alone, we will destroy the stadium or the field, just for the staging. And then rather than come back and put it back when we do not use it, no school in our ISD uses the stadium currently. Used to be the place for junior high football games, but no more.
So we just rent it? Is that
We
what
rent
you're
it
saying?
out. We have a net income of about $500 a year on our facilities, and so $500. No more zeros, 2 zeros. So,
So
you
there
know,
wouldn't be any community backlash to taking that?
well, I mean, the people that rent it right now, you know, they get a pretty good deal on that, but, you know, it's private schools and some other organizations that would rent it, but no campus.
People that play the big soccer game there, that can be, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Oh, that's where I play, you know.
It's okay, we lost 3-2.
To expand on that a little bit, I've been told that is that stadium has been dedicated to World War II veterans. And, yeah, and that is the only memorial in the city dedicated to World War II veterans.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Anybody, you guys?
Do we have some official notification of that back there?
I'm checking with the VFW, but they didn't even care about it before. They didn't even know.
I'm not aware that there's any type of designation on the space. There's no plaques.
Well, we do have some historical, I mean, it could, the historical piece could be restored to whatever we engage and build there and continue and acknowledge.
Well,
that.
that's my point. I mean, we have to be very
We probably
sensitive to that.
do a better job of acknowledging that than we do today, because I didn't even know about it.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
not
I've heard
acknowledged
that.
at all.
Yeah.
So we could enhance that piece of it and incorporate that into the design.
I don't really see any reason, I mean,
The
We
only
needed
con
it. Yeah,
would
go
be,
ahead.
you know, really at all, would be that if it stays on the list, you're gonna get a lot of different, feedback from different groups of people about this. Whereas if you take it off the list and we just fund it out of capital projects, you won't get that feedback. So that's, you know, that I could see that as.
I felt
potentially a
like
con.
the feedback that we got about the need to be able to serve more students, I mean, I think we all kind of felt like that was valid. And the heartburn that most of us felt was just over the price tag associated with, those things were kind of conflated together, but this is, I think, a very reasonable number to be able to meet a very real need. So, I mean, I think if we weren't in the midst of these current bond discussions, we would just be talking about whether or not we could fund it out of capital projects, and I think that's what we
And one other thing on early college high school, we moved away just based on feedback from looking at that as a standalone, but something that we're going to explore is how to make that a pathway to some degree at each of the high schools within their current programming. Either as a pathway, we're limited in space, we're gonna have to be creative in how we do that. We have room right now at Berkner, but that's something that we are committed to looking at as an additional option, but not as part of a standalone facility.
So if we use that $7.2 million out of capital projects to do that, what was there something already on the list of what we would have used that money for from a capital project standpoint? Are we replacing something that we
No,
might
you're not
have
knocking
used?
anything off of the list necessarily, but this combined with the operations center, you're obligating the funds for this year and next. So, in large part, I
You're
mean,
making
if our
commitments
variance
on
is
down the
higher,
road, which if something unexpected comes up, you're committed a couple years out now.
you're committed, you'd have to look at other options to fund that. An example is look at all the classroom additions that we've done in the last, 3-4 years. All of those have been funded from capital projects. So that part, we have other provisions and other things that we could tap into if we had to on it, but you wouldn't have those funds available.
So that didn't give you any heartburn or anything like taking the.
Well, sure, it does, but not, I think we can, I'm comfortable, making that, offering that up.
He's gonna take a Pepsi too.
I think we're way past Pepsi days.
So, extra strength. I heard you say that the stadium would be eliminated, but tell me what that means. Like, the space is still there, the new construction would not encroach on that space. At one point in time, you guys had talked about a community space back there. Is that still space that could be developed in that way later?
Well, if you were to build the one-story, non-traditional academy,
Mm-hmm.
they're just a single story, you're not maximizing your vertical use, so you're going to encroach, you're gonna get into some of that space, where the stadium is now,
Okay.
the edge of it. You'll take where the current transportation building is, that gets demolished. We've already covered that expense as part of the operations center cost, but, that all gets demolished, but that's a fairly narrow strip. There's just a drive between the annex and the transportation building. And so you've got that little drive, and then you've got the transportation building, and then it will come over into the field. It won't take the whole field, but it will come over into it. And then what would happen with the rest of the space, at least, we can do whatever you want with it. We would envision, at least at the onset, it would be green space.
Okay. And that's what I guess I'm trying to get to. I mean, we're not gonna just leave torn up turf and half a bleacher standing out there behind a new building, right?
No.
We're trying to.
Gravel.
No.
Okay,
No.
got it.
No, it'll be a finished product. It will be parking. We'll have to have a fire lane, around the back of it, completely still. We have one kind of back there now, but we'll have to make sure that goes all the way around. We'll have green space. We could even, we could tie into the trail that's back here, do some improvements with that, and then the space back here would become additional parking.
So we could also kind of make it a nice space for the employees that work in this building too, right? Like if you wanted to go out there and eat lunch or something?
Yeah, we could.
Because it's
We
temporary.
had a little outdoor space here, rough, this is us trying to go in and ask, an architect how much it costs to build a building before they can draw the designs, and they get very, edgy about giving you a real number on that. So what they do, this number is probably a little bit high. I would think when we get down to the actual bids and pricing it out, it will come in a little bit better than the 7.3, would be my guess, on it.
So if we made that decision to move to the building that was a could accommodate 2 stories. Does that take it out of the approachable realm to be used in capital projects, cost-wise?
No, you're still there, you're still in the range. I mean, because you're talking about where it gives me a little comfort is that your expenditures are gonna run all the way through August of 2017. So that gives me the funds that we just transferred in there as part of, or are going to transfer in there as part of the fiscal year end that we just completed, plus 15-16, plus 16-17. So if we go above, I've got that third year, I'm gonna have funds coming in then that I can use for at least a portion of the expenditures, and that will give us some comfort.
So did we, even though we talked about scaling this down, at this point, did we talk anything about adding 2 more rooms, or I don't even know what the number would be to accommodate a daycare, a daycare / facility for our workers, because we know we hear that on a regular basis, that that's what they need and want. I mean, what would it take?
What we've had a lot of discussion about, and it's discussion in conjunction with really analyzing our enrollment and capacity and growth, is opening up some different spaces on existing campuses, for example, pre-K, and for the daycare. We have 2 sites right now. And so we're looking at the data, looking at how many denials, how many on the waiting list. And so we're in the planning stages for that right now. That's part of our analysis, rather than as a standalone.
But wouldn't it be really helpful to have it here in the administration complex, or does that matter? As far as serving our,
It's
serving our employees?
centralized.
They'd probably rather be closer to where they work.
Well, we have one north, we have one south, so.
Now,
And you could, what happens a lot of times, if you have a kiddo that qualifies and you get transfer requests for other siblings, so it's one drop off for parents. And that's a transfer request, and if there's room, would probably be approved. And so you end up with one drop off for the little ones and the older siblings at a campus.
And you said that would include some additional spaces for pre-K, or just for serving our employees in the facility itself?
We're looking, we're looking at those options for both pre-K and for daycare.
And what's our timing on when we'll know what those options look like?
We'll have to, our demographic update, to be a comprehensive one, we will complete in January, February?
January.
And so we're doing internal data checks right now, and then with those projections, we'll be able to bring something to the board as part of the budget planning process for the following year.
Now, the issue about this building, though, if you, 1-story, 2-story, still have a December 7th hard date. So, that's just the only thing that I think's up in the air is if you ever thought you were going to want additional space, you're gonna get some efficiencies if you go vertical with it, but I mean, you don't have to do it that way. We're gonna build it in a fashion that would, I wanna use the term modular, but I don't want you to think modular building where we could add on to it. So we could certainly take up more dirt and just come off of that, but this is something to think about.
So first of all, thank you. I really appreciate that you guys went back and kind of gave us that full range of options, because I think we started off in one place and now we've kind of gotten down to the other end of that, and I know that that's not an insignificant time commitment to research and put all that together. I guess I'm not clear about what the next steps are and what you guys need from us to get to a trigger point. I'm hearing an urgency around timeline. I'm hearing that there's an option around building up to a 2nd story and doing it in capital projects. And so if we could talk a little more about process, that would help me. And then I'll just add that I have worked in a building where all our offices were on the 1st floor and the 2nd floor wasn't finished out for 5 years. And when they got needed, when the 2nd floor was needed, they went and spent the money and finished it out. So I get what you're saying about the efficiency of going ahead and creating the structure that way. And I think that could be a prudent use of our building dollars.
Yeah, I would concur with that.
There's really three questions. One, are you comfortable funding this project out of capital funds? And then the second one, for the 7 million with one story only, and then the third one, or take it on up to capability for a second story with some additional money in there. And Tony said we could cover that out of capital projects since we've got through 2017.
And I don't want anybody to feel rushed about it.
Well, I don't feel
So-
rushed, I just, I don't know what's next.
So what would happen for us is, I would want you to take as much time as you want to be able to have thoughtful dialogue about this and make a good decision. It's just that if that goes beyond December 7th, or whatever our board meeting date is in December, I can't deliver it for August of 2017. So we can,
Yes, it does.
See them at risk.
That part has to be, but I think what I'm hearing is we've gotten an understanding of the pros and cons on the one-story facility, the $7 million facility, but helping us understand what are the pros and cons of a two-story facility. Obviously, there's some flexibility long-term, but are there things that we would not be able to do because we're spending incremental funds to create a two-story building? I think that's the question that I'm feeling from the board. Is that correct?
I
One
think
of
it
the
just
questions-
limits our future flexibility is what I heard about our spending
For a
options.
little while.
Because we're spending into stuff for a couple years out. So I don't necessarily have questions about that, other than like quantifying what that means, but.
Well, and I guess it's gonna be hard timing wise if we don't get the demographic report till January, February, to be able to know, are we going to have severe overcrowding in places where we will need to address, either at elementary or junior high level, because we're addressing in the bond, the high school capacity issues, but can we at least go back and look at what we have already that we're working with to know, are there going to be issues elementary-wise that are going to need to be addressed in the next 2 years, capacity-wise, that we no longer would have the choice to do because we've used those capital funds to build this facility. I know we're asking for the genie lamp, but that's what part of this game is to make sure that we
Well,
have.
We've kind of done some of that for that.
I know we have, but I'm just
And
thinking
so
we
like
just
for
gotta make
us,
sure
you
we.
know, we've done the addition of enforcement of junior high, to try to anticipate that future growth. We've got the two high schools where we're gonna have a problem with capacity. We've got that built into the bond
Right.
figures. And so the timing, we feel like we're good on those. As we look at all the other campuses, I mean, you're never gonna be able to make overflow go away, realistically.
No.
But there are a couple of trigger points in there. You know, White Rock Elementary is one, and we've got an option there that we can go with next year that would free up 2 classrooms in that building and reduce the amount of overflow. But if you look at their trend over time, the demographers are not expecting this large cohort to continue. So your kindergarten class is going to start getting smaller. You know, there's just only so many homes that can be flipped. And what we're seeing is reduced yield on multifamily, and so that's the trend. Now, we'll get that update in January, but you've got a few, and we wouldn't propose adding on to White Rock at this point. It's, you know, it goes back to that discussion of how big's too big.
Right.
And we feel like where they're at, you know, they're right at 950, 980 on capacity. That's big enough, and we don't make them bigger. Lake Highlands Junior High is one that we've got a little bit of an issue on, but we've already taken steps to have a net add on classroom space there, and we're completing that work this fall. And so we're handling that with capital project funds we had already dedicated to it as part of our building blocks that we did last spring and summer. So I think we're in pretty good shape. The only other campus that's really on the radar is Mark Twain Elementary. And the only reason we haven't already brought that forward to you for construction is that their enrollment is not a sustained number, is they decline. And we have opportunities at Mark Twain, just like we do at White Rock, to be able to look at some room utilization there and free up a couple of classrooms in that building. So we,
Well,
nobody
and-
knows for sure, but that's our crystal ball right now.
Right.
And then where we would have still some discretion is we have, I would not recommend using the permanent school fund. I think as long as you can possibly hang on to that, it was created to generate a revenue stream to help our operating budget. It also creates a very unique aspect to our financials when credit rating agencies look at us that help us sustain that higher credit rating, which causes our debt cost to be lower. But we have some designations within our fund balance that we have put in place purposefully that could be used for extraordinary construction. So if something were to happen and we had another elementary school that wasn't on our radar, but all of a sudden it flares up with enrollment, that we need to come in and do something quickly, we could still.
Well, part of that is that what you just relayed to us is a conversation we haven't necessarily had, and so I just want to make sure, that part of that question was just to make sure we have had those. You guys are having those conversations, and we're again moving prudently with the thought process of how and
Right.
where and why we need those dollars.
Well, Prairie Creek, that one's already on
Sure.
the list, and that construction we're already underway as far as that design and construction. And we already had dedicated funds for that
Right.
from capital projects, so any of the money we're looking at are already net of that expense.
I guess one thing, adding on what Lynette was saying is, I mean, obviously, if we're trying to quantify, okay, what is 1-story versus 2-story versus, kind of building in that extra, capacity to go vertical if we need to down the road.
Right.
But I'm assuming, some of that, I'm assuming we can still talk about after turning loose the construction manager at risk and having them help us quantify those dollars as opposed to, making that decision, in the next 30 days before we have that information. Is that an accurate assumption?
We have already kind of stretched our circumstance with that construction manager risk. In order to hit that deadline, we've already done the solicitation for it. So we gave them a scope of work, and now we're modifying the scope of work, which we can do, but we really need to land on the
Same
scope
strategy.
when you approve the contract.
Because we could ordinarily do that, but because of the tight timeline, we need to
Right.
be locked in those.
Right. So in all fairness to them, we're gonna have to give them an opportunity to revisit their fee because their fee was based on a certain scope. And so we're pulling that scope down, and we just need to land on what that's going to be, in general terms. Now, the specifics of it, you'll still have some time, because we have to go through the planning zoning process and the permitting process, and we're using a truncated version of that right now, very aggressive, and, Mr. Lynn knows that probably better than anybody in the room, since he's been planning zoning for some time. That's normally a 6-month process, and we're crushing that down. So we would need to land on, in general terms, what that was gonna be.
And then the only other thing I'd add is just, building on what both you and Lynette said, obviously Lake Highlands growth issues, because I'm probably closer to it than most. That's definitely, and I brought this up at the bond subcommittee meeting, but for everybody else, that'll definitely be a conversation in the community this fall as we roll that out. Specifically White Rock and Lake Highlands Junior High and Lake Highlands Elementary too, to some degree. So, we'll obviously have to have, as we get that demographic data, and it's a complicated discussion because we've got some centralized programs at some of those campuses, and it's we all realize that there's those campuses are tight, and we'll have to take all those factors into account and come up with the best solution. They're not suggesting that we'll figure out the right way forward on that, but know that there'll be some discussion and that certainly in the Lake Highlands area, as we go after those community meetings about that topic, and, we're just gonna have to work through it, as we can get more data and dig in, and find the right way forward.
So, Dr. Wagner, taking the conversation into consideration, why don't we look at the calendar for November? And we'll ask y'all to bring us a recommendation that we can take action on, either the general meeting or the study session, or the work session in November. Does that sound agreeable to you, everyone?
And I get a sense of comfort that you guys are okay with it out of capital projects, real decisions, one story, or whether to accommodate a second story, or you want a recommendation with some rationale.
Correct.
I think we need to know what those couple options look like. I guess we know one of them.
Okay.
The only other thing I would comment on this page is tell me that when you introed this page, you talked about the three remaining sort of built in the 70s, and you listed a couple list of things that we're going to do versus construction capacity, and I would like to see us put a description up here in this block where we had descriptions on some of the other programmatic things that address those, just 3 or 4 sentences that target those two different things.
Page 16.
16. On the others, we've had some words up there.
Every other campus got touched in the last cycle except for these three.
But you listed 4 or 5 or 6 things we're gonna do with those 70s buildings versus, and then a couple sentences about addressing capacity in these areas and why, and what we're doing to make sure that we.
Sure. Okay.
Before we go on, Tony, on Yale, concrete foundation issues, does that include the stairs leading up to the building?
It includes, we would end up replacing some of the paving.
Okay, yeah, because they're really bad shape.
Yeah, they've got some, there's lights built into the
Right.
concrete there
Yeah.
that's corroded, and so it would be addressing that entry as well.
Okay, fantastic, thank you.
Include these last 4 pages?
Very quickly.
Or, yes, sir.
Yes, we can. Next page is facilities. These are cycles. These are items that will reach into useful life within the 5-year period. We talked about this a little bit before with technology. This is not everything that will reach into life within the 5-year period. This is taking the same approach that we took in 2011. So for the first 4 years, it's end of life. In the 5th year, it's about 20% of what we would expect to reach end of life in the 5th year. And so in the 5th year, we will be break fix, will be mode we'll go into. We were able to get through this year. This year is the 5th year of the 2011 bond. We're able to get through that okay with it. We just need to understand that if everything were to fail in that 5th year, that's at end of life in the 5th year, we would have to make additional provision with other funds, which is part of why we have that designation of fund balance.
Right.
The next page is furniture, office equipment, copiers. This is going to the new furniture, the innovative learning furniture. I know we don't want to use the term 21st century anymore, but it's not the same old wood desks. It's the newer stuff would be part of this.
Chris, you're gonna have to provide substitution language if you call out the fact that we can't say it anymore.
The furniture formerly known as 21st century.
That's right.
The artist formerly known as Prince.
I heard a term today
What is it?
about next generation learning.
It's better.
I heard it in another setting.
Star Trek.
Prepare for next generation
Yeah,
learning.
it's not 16 years old then, right? But that's what's included here, copier cycles, and then just office equipment. All these things are end of life, they will reach end of life within that 5-year period. If you go to the next page, maintenance cycles, again, all these are just equipment for maintenance and grounds that will reach end of life within the 5-year period. And then bond program planning. These are the salaries for the folks that are dedicated to bond management, whether it be the project managers, the bond program managers, all those folks are included in this figure. And then the last page is transportation. These are the truck fleet and bus fleet replacement items are included in that. Questions? Other questions?
Looks to me like if you just get rid of air conditioning, then we'll easily pass this on.
There you go.
was actually our first bond collection, wasn't it, back in the '60s for air conditioning.
That was our, I don't know if it was our
Lowest
first,
pass- wasn't the first
it was
one,
our
it was the
lowest
Lowest
Yeah.
pass.
passing rate. was
17 million
when
or
we
something.
put it-
The lowest number of people voted for it to pass it.
Yeah, the lowest
Only
percentage
50-something
passing, was for putting
They
air
didn't pass it, they
conditioning in
didn't think we needed
schools.
it.
Which I think is
I
kind
can
of
remember coming in from being outside, at recess, and there was one fan, like as high as that thing, and we'd all be jumping, trying to get it. Honestly.
Yeah.
I still didn't
Look
have
how you turned out. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll make the changes that you all, have suggested and try to bring you a revised copy for, to the best of our ability Monday night.
Thank you.
Thank you for the detail. Yeah, thank you.
Very well done. Great job, Kenny. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's take,
Thanks, Sandra, for your help.
a quick break. 7 minutes, 8 minutes to grab a drink. Well, you're optimistic, I've done these breaks before. There we go. Okay, Dr. Weimer, so the second is communications.
Okay, let me tell you what we've got, and we're not going to read this to you, but this is the point with pages, and I think you're listening to it. And so I'll just take you real quickly through it, and then we'll come back at the end, and if you guys have any specific questions, but, if you turn to the first page, I'm actually going to kick that off and just kind of set the stage for the thank you for bond 2011, and then the bond 2016 overview. And then if you look at the second page, this is just a recap of the important points about the 2011 bond. And then the next page is actually a video in picture form about the projects that we completed in the 2011 bond. And then we actually, at that point, after the video, move into information regarding the 2016 overview. So I'll cover the timeline, and then really at that point, I punt, and Tony picks it up and covers the financial piece. So if you look at the next page, it really is the finance overview. And you're familiar with most of these things that he's talked about in terms of finances. The next page is a quick overview of the different categories, the 3 big buckets that we have. So he'll cover that at a 30,000-foot level, and then talk about different bond scenarios. Then the next page is maintenance items. He'll go through and explain those items. The next page is capacity and construction, and it covers the 2 high schools, and it covers the 3 elementaries that still need to be renovated from the 70s. And then we move into the enrichment options, and Dr. Strong picks up here and talks about enriching the teaching experience, the multi-purpose facility options. The next page is the increased student programming options with Kate and JROTC. And then the next page is the collaborative learning spaces option. And then the last thing really is the technology enrichment option. And then we open it up for Q&A, thoughts, parties, areas in which people need more information. What we've got completed right now is a video for thank you for 2011. We're almost complete with the other videos, which will have a picture form of where we are now and some things that could be and what some of those enrichment options look like. And so we thought you might tonight want to see just a quick thank you video for 2011.
In 2011, Richardson ISD voters approved $170 million in bond funds for our district. Thanks to your support, Bond 2011 is making a difference in the educational lives of our students. Our ISD schools require continued capital maintenance to provide safe, comfortable, and functional learning spaces. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, roofs, interiors, clinics, mechanical projects, plumbing, security, electrical, and energy management systems were refreshed, upgraded, or replaced. Fine arts and athletics were also addressed through work done at all 4 high schools' auditoriums, renovations of all 8 junior high fine arts areas, as well as new equipment and uniforms for athletics. Playgrounds underwent safety upgrades and dated equipment was replaced. The Environmental Studies Center, visited by thousands of our ISD students annually, had improvements made to the pond area, including a sustainable water source. All schools had some type of facility update. 5,000 tons of HVAC equipment was replaced, about the same tonnage as 125 18-wheeler trucks. 57,700 square feet of corridor flooring was replaced, about the same amount of flooring it would take to cover a football field. And on 2011 made it possible to replace 679,023 square feet of roofing, a little more roofing than what is on AT&T Stadium. Technology comprised 31% of Bond 2011. Multiple projects were completed to allow technology to be integrated into all subject areas to provide real-world experiences for students. Every single facility received technology upgrades. Students in the digital age learned in different ways than decades ago, and designs that worked well in the 1950s through the 1970s aren't ideal to serve the needs of learners in 2015. Bond 2011 impacted all 55 campuses. Of those, 17 had major capital projects. As we close out work on Bond 2011, we pause to say,
thank you.
Thank you for voting.
Thank you for investing in my future.
Thank you for supporting the bond.
Thank you so much for supporting public education in our community.
Thank you for caring about our schools.
What do you guys think?
Good.
Yeah, Larson was here.
Where'd it
earlier.
go?
He did a fantastic
Yeah, he did.
job.
That's good, that's good.
Anyway, I didn't want to go through and read any of these with you tonight. I know the hour is getting late, but if you have questions about any of the particular pages.
So let me just clarify what, all of this will ultimately be pieces of video that piece together, or the parts that are here that are not in the video, you guys are gonna present live? I just want to make sure I understood.
This is going to be presented, we're going to discuss it, but we're going to have a video section that goes with each of the three buckets.
Okay. So we'll have live presentation
And
and
they'll be
video.
limited to live.
So if I could just jump in, we have the maintenance category that Tony is slated to talk about in person.
Okay.
We have the capacity piece that also he's just gonna talk to at this point. And then we have the enrichment options at this point. They're looking like the multi-purpose facilities, CTE and ROTC. And also,
Technology.
technology and.
Collaborative space.
Yes.
So the videos
So those
will
four.
accompany the enrichment pieces. I misspoke. It's not the three main buckets, but it's the enrichment pieces.
So all of the presentations will have some live presentations and some video. That's, I'm just trying to get a picture of what it looks like, okay?
And we're trying to just give people a picture of what the possibilities are.
Okay, okay.
And then Kara, regarding the listening tour, if trustees want to attend, there's not a speaking role for them, is that correct? But they're welcome to attend, and we're trying to coordinate that out. We'll share that. Sure.
Absolutely encourage, have you, encourage you to really lend your thoughts and support, but not in a structured way. At this point, senior staff under Dr. Wagner's direction will carry the presentation, and then we will have the comment cards available for everyone attending, so that everybody has an opportunity to give feedback. Catherine, I believe, is going to coordinate calendars for you all, so that you have ample time to decide who should attend and what works with your schedules.
So Catherine, are you going to send out individual invitations for the listening tour that people can then respond back to you?
Yes, ma'am, like
And
a
then-
calendar invite.
Okay, be a calendar.
Do we have to avoid quorums with those?
Yes.
So, we'll just have to, first come, first served, I
Yes.
guess.
For your list.
And I'll confirm.
So I'm looking at the card, and I just want to make sure, so we are not asking them to reflect on the dollar amounts, though, in terms of what dollar amounts the community will support, or are we?
So there is one role that we've asked the community in general, and then I'll ask Tony if he doesn't mind stepping in and talking a little bit more about our PRT steering committee.
Yeah? Sure. The bond steering committee, we will be asking them for detailed input on dollars. and individual items within the post. So what we envision is giving them the same video and the same information, but then they would also get this detailed document, and we would go through, maybe not in quite as much detail as we went through tonight, but we would try to go through the major areas for them and help them understand, what was included, and then we would want their feedback on we don't, on the enrichments really, we don't anticipate having a lot of, the need for a lot of discussion about the cycles and maintenance. Those are items that are end of useful life. You're going to replace, you recommend replacing those items. I don't think anybody's going to necessarily need to debate that. Even the construction piece, we don't anticipate a lot of time spent debating that. We may have questions about it and how we arrived at numbers, but I don't think anyone's going to question the three remaining schools. Everyone else has gotten the renovation work, those three have not. So we're just fulfilling that, what we see as that obligation there. And so most of the dialogue would be on those four areas and on the enrichments. And on the enrichments, it's not that we're going to limit their conversation at all. They can talk about whatever they want, but we're going to try to encourage them to not get lost in the minutia of it. Do they need to spend a lot of time talking about a $5,000 item in health services? Probably not. But they need to spend time talking about the instructional technology piece and what, getting their reflections on what we are recommending there. The CTE, we anticipate that being very positive, just expanding offerings for kids. Most of it would be around that, the indoor practice facilities, that being the instructional technology, indoor practice facilities, and then depending on where we land on the non-traditional academy. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess
for
I'm
their
just
specific
wondering
feedback.
about, we can certainly talk to the community about these pieces of it, but if we're not actually talking to our community about what is their tolerance for the amount of tax increase or the amount of the bond itself as a whole, we're not gonna get any sense from them about what that looks like. And maybe we don't think we need that, I don't know, I'm just asking out loud.
That could come up in the Q&A,
Yeah.
Lynette. We'll be prepared to speak to it, about what does this mean for the debt tax rate. We'll be able to tell them, those financial scenarios that we could issue this much without impacting it at all, and then we could go this far, and it would mean this much impact. We'll be able to speak to that, and then part of that card is they would be able to give us reflection on, whether they think that's a good idea or a bad idea.
Okay, all right, at least we're prepared to answer those, okay?
Absolutely, we will be. You're going to get more detailed feedback at the bond reflectors.
Sure.
Because we're going to spend more time with them. The
Right.
expectation is they're going to give us that kind of information. We're going to give them those financial scenarios, and they're going to be able to look at that, the implications for 2021, and the whole bit. And so we'll dive into it a little deeper.
In fact, in Tony's presentation, he actually covers just generally in terms of information
What
and
those
scenarios, so
scenarios
they'll be able
look
to reflect. But we're bringing the bond stakeholder and budget review team, stakeholder committee in up front, and then we'll come back and revisit all the reflections and share that with the stakeholder committee. But ultimately, the stakeholder committee will be the one that we ask in terms of, supporting the single propositions, multiple propositions, total dollar amount, those kinds of specific questions will be with the budget review team stakeholder committee. And then we'll bring the recommendation to the board.
And how are we gonna compile what information you get from here, and what are we gonna do with it?
Right, so, my department has volunteered to be the custodians of those cards, and, as of right now, we're also doing an online way for people to submit their input. And so we will tally that and update you all, at whatever frequency is, put to the document.
So what could happen on it, Lynette, is they may come back with some suggestions. If there's an item that we have not covered within the scope that they would like for us to consider, that kind of thing, we could incorporate that into the requests and go from there. We feel like it's pretty comprehensive, and that we've done our due diligence on, especially with we've gotten the smaller things with those building blocks. That captures a lot of those little campus-specific kinds of items.
Okay.
And that's what will happen.
So Tony, I heard you mention you're gonna use this detail that you shared with us tonight with the reflector group, and we won't be taking that out as part of these presentations. Did I hear that correctly?
Right.
We will be providing this detail that you received tonight. They will get that.
To the reflector group only?
Reflector.
Budget review.
Yes.
Okay, because one thing that hit me as we were going through it, I get that it's in alphabetical order, but the very first thing we talk about is athletics. And so I would just hope that we frame that for the people that we're putting it in front of, that, hey, it's alphabetical. So that there's no implied or inferred
Right.
preference there to some of those items.
Kara, thank you. And please thank Marcia and your staff. They've done a phenomenal job. Very much appreciated.
Show that picture of Ms. Caston on your desk.
You gotta make that in the background.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's nice.
Ouch. That was ow. Okay, now shortly after that picture, I did get my hair cut and I did have a different picture for Marcia, I'm just saying. Yeah.
Even though that's
Two of us.
Oh.
with that, man.
Let's blow those up.
Let's not do Sandra, we need the network to go down.
Right now?
Immediately.
Because you don't want that picture if you're in high school, Sean, is that true?
Yeah, immediately. Oh, thank you, there it goes.
Yeah.
Karen, will you please send Arson that cool video was?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Really good.
I'm sorry that he waited here all night and didn't get to hear our oohs and ahs, but
He was getting his background.
that's how difficult he is.
Cinematic treasures. Going forward.
Near future issues, so I think
gotcha.
it was minimal on that break.
Okay, thank you guys tonight. We shared a lot of information. I hope that you had an opportunity to ask any question about any of the line items on the proposals. And if you've got questions that you didn't think about tonight, don't hesitate to give us a buzz. And then we gave you just a glimpse into what the thank you listening tours are going to look like. We're excited about those. They actually kick off with our secondary team this week. So we'll be doing in-house first. And several of you have submitted names for different groups that we'll try to touch and reach out to. But anyway, Monday night, we will bring back the priority list with the changes that you recommended. I know Tony took notes, and Jeannie took notes, and I took notes, and Kara and Sandra probably took, and Catherine. So I think we'll have a good sense of what we need to incorporate in there for Monday night. Our goal is to bring some revised technology first to you so that you can have that. And then we'll also, Mrs. Caston and I will look at the planning calendar and schedule November with some time to bring back the discussion about CM at risk for the non-traditional academy. Anyway, thank you guys. This has been helpful for us each time we hear it. I think we probably pick up different things that will be helpful in terms of the questions that you get. We want everyone to be, or to have their best foot forward to this and to have all the information that you need so that you're comfortable answering questions about the process and the items.
And I just want to echo Dr. Wagner's comments. You know, this is a process that started last year, and there were different folks sitting at this table, Karen Holborn, Adam Meyerhofer, who worked diligently, Aaron and Jean throughout your listening tour, if you will, as y'all were putting yourself out there to be on the board. This tonight represented the hours and hours that we spent, and so I think as we're getting ready to step off into the listening tour and take these recommendations to our community to say, this is what we see the future for our children. And so I just want to echo, Kay, thank you, Kay, to you, Tony, Sandra, Kara, Jeannie, you've come on board, Catherine, for helping to coordinate all of this. It has been an incredible journey and a different one. It looks different than the ones we've taken in the past. So thank you to everybody for your time and your willingness to really invest what we need to do for our kids. So with that, 9:17, this meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, awesome.